It was a quiet afternoon at a small elementary school in the heart of Texas, nestled amidst rolling hills and fields. The students of Clearwater Elementary were going about their daily activities, their laughter and chatter filling the air. The warm sun filtered through the windows of Mrs. Johnson's classroom, casting a soft glow on the rows of small desks. As fate would have it, that day Mrs. Johnson was absent, and a substitute teacher had taken her place. Ms. Thompson, a young and enthusiastic teacher, stood at the front of the classroom, trying her best to make the students feel comfortable. She smiled warmly as she introduced herself and began the day's lessons. The classroom hummed with the energy of youth, but Ms. Thompson's attention was drawn elsewhere. A subtle chill seemed to crawl down her spine when she glanced out into the hallway. There, amidst the passing students, was a figure that didn't quite fit the scene. A man, tall and gaunt, walked with measured steps, his eyes avoiding hers as if shunning any connection. Clad in a teacher's outfit, the stranger's presence raised no immediate alarms. Ms. Thompson assumed he must be a new teacher or another substitute, despite the nagging unease that gnawed at her thoughts. She strained her memory, trying to recall if there had been any mention of a new staff member, but nothing came to mind. A glance at the clock revealed that it was almost time for recess. Just as the students began to gather their belongings, the intercom crackled to life, and the principal's voice echoed through the speakers, firm but trembling, as he ordered an immediate lockdown. The words hung in the air like a shroud of dread, suffocating the room's previously carefree atmosphere. Reality slammed into Ms. Thompson's consciousness. Panic coursed through her veins, and the pieces fell into place with a sickening clarity. The strange man in the hallway was not a teacher. He was an intruder who had somehow infiltrated the school. The creeping dread that had gnawed at her senses was validated by the urgency in the principal's voice. She locked eyes with the students, their expressions a mixture of confusion and fear. Acting on instinct, she herded them to the back corner of the classroom, away from the windows and the line of sight from the door. Their whispers were barely audible, trembling voices weaving a tapestry of shared terror. Moments stretched into an eternity as they waited, every creak of the building magnified, every gust of wind outside a potential threat. The school was engulfed in a suffocating silence, broken only by the distant wails of sirens approaching. The blaring sirens grew closer until they reached a crescendo, followed by the sound of screeching tires. Police cars converged upon the school, their red and blue lights painting the halls with an eerie glow. Officers armed and determined swarmed the building, their presence a mix of reassurance and tension. Ms. Thompson's heart raced as she listened to the rhythmic thud of footsteps in the hallway, punctuated by muffled voices and the jingle of keys. The police were methodically sweeping through the school, searching for the intruder who had turned their sanctuary into a prison of fear. Finally, a burst of static from the intercom signaled the end of the lockdown. The police had secured the building, and the students were no longer in immediate danger. A collective sigh of relief rippled through the room, but it was accompanied by the lingering trauma of what they had just experienced. Gentle knocks on the classroom door heralded the arrival of the principal and a police officer. With a mixture of exhaustion and gratitude, Ms. Thompson unlocked the door and allowed them to enter. The officer explained that they had apprehended the intruder, a man who turned out to be Mrs. Johnson's ex-husband. The revelation hit like a sledgehammer. The man in the hallway, the one who had been so close to her, was not a stranger, but a former part of the school's community. He had come with sinister intentions, a plan to kidnap his ex-wife, and Ms. Thompson had been an unwitting pawn in his dangerous game. As the reality of the situation settled in, Ms. Thompson felt a whirlwind of emotions. Fear, of course, but also anger and a profound sense of vulnerability. The walls that had once felt secure now seemed paper-thin, and the illusion of safety was shattered. She realized that the line between normalcy and chaos was far thinner than anyone cared to acknowledge. In the days that followed, the incident cast a long, haunting shadow over Clearwater Elementary. The once bustling halls were now tinged with an air of unease. Parents clung to their children a little tighter during drop-offs, and teachers eyed every stranger with suspicion. For Ms. Thompson, the experience was a crucible of emotions that forever changed her perspective. The job she had loved, the opportunity to shape young minds and create a nurturing environment, had been overshadowed by a darker reality. The scars left by that day's events would never fully heal, a constant reminder that safety was a fragile illusion. As the school year continued, Ms. Thompson dedicated herself to fostering an environment of vigilance without paranoia, preparedness without fear. She engaged her students in discussions about safety, empowering them with knowledge without burdening them with anxiety. And while the trauma of that day remained etched in her memory, she channeled her fear into resilience, vowing to protect her students at all costs. The whispering shadows of the classroom never truly faded. They lingered, a reminder that the world held both beauty and malevolence, often separated by the thinnest of veils. Clearwater Elementary stood as a testament to the strength of a community, united by a shared experience and a determination to emerge from the darkness, stronger and more vigilant than before. The moon hung heavy in the sky, casting an eerie glow over the sprawling estate where Miranda's much-anticipated pool party was in full swing. The night was alive with the sound of music, laughter, and the rhythmic splashes of guests diving into the pool. The air was thick with excitement, and the atmosphere was electric, as if the very universe conspired to make this a night to remember. Miranda, with her radiant smile and boundless energy, had spared no expense in planning the party. The spacious backyard was transformed into a dazzling paradise, adorned with twinkling lights and elegant decorations. The guests, numbering well over 150, were dressed to impress, and the drinks flowed freely, adding to the merriment that seemed to be infectious. As the night wore on, however, a subtle unease began to creep in. Whispers circulated among the attendees. The music was too loud, the drinks too strong, and something about the atmosphere had turned unsettling. Yet the youthful spirits prevailed, and most brushed off the discomfort, determined to revel in the night's delights. But then the first complaint came. A neighbor from the adjacent property stormed in, shouting about the noise and the chaos that had disrupted their peace. The mood momentarily shifted, but Miranda's charm and quick thinking managed to placate the neighbor, and the party raged on. Yet the complaints didn't stop. They trickled in one after another, like raindrops preceding a storm. The music seemed to penetrate the very walls, and the wild exuberance had begun to encroach upon the quiet suburban neighborhood, unleashing a torrent of resentment. And then the final straw broke. The police were called to intervene. Sirens wailed as patrol cars lined the street, and the once joyous atmosphere descended into chaos. Panic swept through the crowd like a wildfire, and guests scattered in every direction. In the aftermath of the police's arrival, a few brave or perhaps intoxicated souls chose to remain behind. Among them, Miranda's closest friends. They huddled together, their laughter turning into nervous chuckles as they exchanged bewildered glances. Determined to salvage the night, they cracked open another round of drinks and clung to the belief that they could still salvage the party. Amidst the dimming of the festivities, a curious sound pierced the air, a sharp crack that reverberated through the house. They paused, exchanging puzzled glances, before laughter resumed, dismissing the sound as part of the house's eccentricities. But as minutes ticked by, unease festered, and a few of them set out to investigate, their footsteps cautious against the hardwood floors. Upstairs, they stumbled upon the scene. A friend lay sprawled on the bed in a guest room, seemingly unconscious. Panic gripped them as they tried to rouse her, but she remained unresponsive, an enigmatic figure in the dim light. Unsure of how to proceed, they exchanged worried glances and decided to leave her be, hoping she would regain consciousness on her own. As they retraced their steps downstairs, laughter began to permeate the tense air once again. They laughed at their own jumpiness, teasing each other about their imagined fears. But then a new sound cut through their mirth, a bone-chilling guttural scream that echoed from the upper floor. They froze, their eyes wide with terror, the blood in their veins turning to ice. Slowly, almost as if controlled by some unseen force, they turned and climbed the stairs, driven by an overpowering compulsion to confront the source of the disturbance. The hallway was dim, shadows dancing on the walls as the sound of their racing hearts seemed to fill the air. The door to Miranda's bedroom creaked open, revealing a scene that defied comprehension. A figure, tall and impossibly thin, stood in the corner of the room. Its features were obscured by the darkness, yet its presence exuded an aura of malevolence that sent shivers down their spines. The girls screamed, their voices a chorus of terror, and instinctively began to flee. But as they moved, they realized with growing horror that they were trapped. The figure seemed to stretch impossibly, its long bony fingers snaking out in every direction. It was as if it existed in multiple places at once, reaching out to brush against their ankles, sending shockwaves of fear rippling through their bodies. They fought against the invisible grip, their panic escalating to a fever pitch. Desperation fueled their efforts as they tried to break free from the encroaching darkness, the very air growing thick with malevolence. One by one, they managed to tear themselves away, stumbling and screaming down the stairs. Their frantic pleas for help pierced the night, and they dialed 911, their trembling fingers barely able to navigate the buttons. They sobbed into the receiver, their words a jumbled mess of fear and desperation. The police were on their way, they were assured, and they clung to that lifeline as the seconds dragged on like hours. But by the time the police arrived, the shadowy figure had vanished into thin air, leaving behind only an indelible sense of dread and the lingering echo of blood-curdling screams. The officers searched the property, finding no trace of the sinister presence that had terrorized the girls. They exchanged puzzled glances, unable to explain the inexplicable. News of the night's events spread like wildfire, and the partygoers who had fled recounted their experiences in hushed, horrified tones. Rumors and speculation swirled, fueled by fear and fascination. The estate that had once been a symbol of opulence and celebration now stood tainted by an indelible mark of darkness. In the weeks that followed, investigators scoured the property, attempting to unravel the enigma that had shattered the night. But despite their efforts, no tangible evidence of the presence was found. Skeptics dismissed it as a collective hallucination, a product of alcohol-fueled hysteria. But for those who had been there was no denying the haunting truth of that night. The survivors, forever scarred by the terror they had witnessed, struggled to return to their normal lives. Nightmares plagued their sleep, and the memory of that shadowy figure cast a long, haunting shadow over their every waking moment. Their bonds of friendship tightened, each survivor a lifeline for the others, a reminder that they were not alone in their ordeal. To this day, the story of Miranda's ill-fated pool party lives on, whispered in hushed tones around campfires and recounted in cautious whispers. The truth remains shrouded in darkness, an unsolved mystery that defies explanation. The survivors, forever bound by the horrors they endured, are haunted by the memory of that fateful night, a chilling reminder that even in the midst of celebration, darkness can descend without warning, forever altering the course of their lives.